Outback Radio 2WEB. Joining me is Matt Dickerson, technologist and futurist. Good morning, Matt. How are you going, mate?
Yeah, good morning, Chris. An exciting week in technology this week, so it's always good to chat about technology.
It's one of my favourite interviews of the week. Probably my favourite, my best one. It's always interesting. Now listen, what did Microsoft just drag up from the bottom of the ocean?
Well, you don't normally associate Microsoft with ocean exploration. I mean, in this case, they're actually dragging up something they buried. 2 years ago, they came up with the idea of burying a data centre. So they dropped it down to the bottom of the ocean, sat it there for 2 years. They've been using it. It's actually been used in real-world scenarios. And then they've pulled it up to just have a look at it to see how it survived on the bottom of the ocean. And it sounds like an interesting scenario because people like to get into data centres from time to time. They don't like to have a data centre locked away. Obviously, at the bottom of the ocean, they weren't sending down divers to open the door and let it flood in with water and have a look at how things were going. So it was one of those scenarios where they wanted to test out, A, could they have it sitting there without any humans touching it for a couple of years? And B, is that ocean environment actually conducive to a data centre? And they chose a spot on the ocean that was fairly cool because one of the big issues with the data centre is cooling a data centre. A lot of power is used to run servers in a data centre, but a lot of power is also used to keep the thing cool. So they put it down in an area of the ocean that was quite cool. They used that to see how it went, and they actually filled it with nitrogen rather than having it filled with oxygen to see whether or not that was actually better for the servers. And what they found was when they pulled it out, they had a lower server failure rate than they would in a normal data centre. And they put that down to maybe less corrosion without oxygen in the air. They only had 8 of the 855 servers fail during the experiment. And they also found that the overall costs of running it, so in other words, the cooling costs were there, so that effectively it was actually cheaper to run. So will we see lots of our data centres on the bottom of the ocean going forward? Not sure they've got to that point yet where they'll start dropping lots of them down, but it was an interesting experiment.
Out of the cloud, eh? All right, how many folds does Motorola claim for the Razr, Matt?
Yeah, they reckon they can get 200,000 folds. And after a few experiments, the Razr 2019 and the first Samsung Fold, you'd think that maybe they're not able to do that, but they've had a folding machine working away, simulating 200,000 folds. And if you break that down, that would mean that someone using the phone could handle 100 times a day, opening and closing the Razr over a 5-year time frame before it started to fail. And so the designers think they've just about got it right. The first ones weren't quite right. There were a few issues there. Probably dented the confidence going forward in relation to folding phones. But I think this year with the new Samsung and the new Motorola Razr, I think we'll see a bit more confidence in the phones. And these fold bots that they use for all these folds is one of those ways that they'll get that confidence in the phones.
Yeah, now a great motor vehicle, the Hummer. I'm not sure whether the Hummer is for sale in Australia currently, but the GMC electric Hummer will be revealed next month, Matt. But why is crab being used in its marketing?
It is an interesting one, Chris. The Hummer, which you're right, isn't for sale at the moment, but when you think of the Hummer, you think of this huge machine that's got this huge big engine here that's basically chewing petrol up as quick as you can put petrol into it. But electric Hummers, this is going to be the way of the future. But the new Hummer has got a crab mode. And what it can actually do, it's got 4-wheel steering, but it can actually move its wheels, and we're not sure quite how far, there's a teaser video, but move its wheels at least 45 degrees to actually go around something. So you can imagine if you're coming along out in the outback somewhere, you come across something you can't quite get over and you're in a bit of a bind, then you can just turn the wheels 45 degrees or maybe more and actually go sideways like a crab and go around it. So it's actually quite an interesting concept. And again, when you've got this ability with electric motors on each wheel, for example, or electric motors driving a pair of wheels, you start to basically peel back the old design concepts of a car and see, can you do things a bit differently? And this 4-wheel steering, it's similar to another electric vehicle. The Rivian has got this mode that basically means you can spin it around. It's called tank mode. So you can have the wheels go sideways and all go in different directions so you can spin around like a tank. So there'll be some interesting things that we come up with, I think, as the time goes forward with electric vehicles and electric pickup trucks.
I really like the Hummer vehicle. I think they're fantastic. Now, this is interesting. An Australian smart helmet promising to warn riders of police, road hazards and traffic. It's sold out in Australia ahead of a global debut stifled by the coronavirus.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm not sure that Australian law enforcement will be that happy about this particular helmet. I think one of the things that this helmet does is provide you a huge amount of information. We saw the Google smart glasses not being that successful, and one of the issues with the smart glasses was that there was just too much information you were trying to be fed in a pair of glasses. But this helmet's almost like an F1 pilot or a fighter pilot having all this information presented in front of them. So you get ideas about which way to turn in terms of navigation. You get information about police speed traps that might be ahead. So you get all this information presented to you inside your helmet. They're not cheap. They're over $1,500, but the first order completely sold out as soon as it went on order. The next order is not even ready to go yet. So I think they'll prove pretty popular with bike riders, motorbike riders, not push bike riders, motorbike riders. I'm not sure how popular they will prove with the police.
So the helmet has audio inside of it, or do you read off?
It has audio inside it as well. So you've got information that's fed to you about turn left, turn right. You've got audio that's fed. Everything that you can think of being presented to you in terms of visual and audio information is able to be fed to you in the helmet.
Oh, wonderful. Both, yeah. Audio and visual. Fantastic. Listen, which tech company is the latest to claim carbon neutrality?
It seems to be a very trendy thing at the moment. I hope they're all doing it the right way. But Google says that not only are they carbon neutral, but they have now equated all of the carbon they've used since their beginning, because they went carbon neutral in 2007. But since the beginning of Google, they say that they've now sequestered or basically put away all the carbon they've ever generated in the life of Google. So that's a pretty big claim to make. And again, there's some people looking over the information they've presented to make sure they are correct in that. By 2030, they're saying that all their data centres and offices will be run completely carbon-free and all the energy will be carbon-free. Other technology companies are saying similar things. Microsoft says that they'll be carbon negative by 2030. Apple says they'll be carbon neutral across all their business and manufacturing, which is again a big claim because they've got manufacturing at different plants across the entire world. So they're saying they'll be carbon neutral by 2030, and Amazon is saying 2040 they'll be carbon neutral, including all the deliveries that they'll be doing in one form or another. So it's a pretty big claim. And again, Google talking about pairing up wind and solar and increasing their battery storage to achieve some of these targets.
Well, Matt, thanks for some fantastic topics this morning. I've learned a few things, very interesting. Now, if you've got your YouTube channel, and people can search Outback Radio 2WEB and search Matthew Dickerson, or either way, can't they?
Absolutely right. We can hear this conversation again as many times as we like. Chris, catch up on the latest technology from these interviews and also via my YouTube channel. So look forward to chatting again next week, Chris.
All right, mate. You have a great week. Talk to you then, Matt.
Thank you.